Hello, Smite fans, and welcome to the Smite Pro League powered by Alienware. We're going to be entering Week 3, Day 1, and obviously, I'm not going to be able to do this all by my own. I'm actually going to have Mifflin joining me to be placing the one and only bets that we can rely on for our top-tier sets today.
Nix that. I actually have been spoken to by not only legal, HR, my accountant, my mother, and everyone in between. I'm actually not allowed to make any bets this week.
And the entirety of Twitch chat, right?
Yeah,
because
Twitch chat.
You also owe them a lot of money.
They've been knocking on my door nonstop.
I can actually believe it, but more importantly, Mifflin, whether or not we actually get you to place any bets on today's games, that'll be determined. But for right now, heading into the schedule for today, we've actually got a little bit of special features coming in because we have the Camelot Kings versus the Valhalla Valkyries. And while I'm sure that this could be a great chance for the Valhalla Valkyries to look for that bounce back opportunity, the Olympus Bolts versus the Solar Scarabs is actually going to be taking place here today in the studios, and I don't know if I could be excited enough for that, Mifflin, because the land factor introduces a whole new plethora of odds.
Yeah, normally I like to hang out in the green room between games, lean back, watch on the big screen, but instead I'm going to just stand between the player booths, kind of like a Romeo-Juliet situation, and just kind of listen in, see if there's enough trash talk flowing, and I'll forward it on to you guys, Twitch chat. If there is some flow, you'll hear about it.
And these are relatively important sets for every single team involved today. As you guys can tell from the standings, Camelot Kings looking to try and maintain staying in that top 3 position. Olympus Bolts, on the other hand, still trying to ensure that they're staying in that number 1 tie position up there with the Atlantis Leviathans. And of course, starting off with the Camelot Kings here today, one thing that I think is safe to say about this team is that they provide the consistency pretty much every single match that they play. And Mifflin, where do you think a lot of this actually builds from for the Kings?
Are you setting me up to talk about big man things? Because I'm going to talk about Harry coming. Actually, it's Variety out of the solo lane. This guy has been so dominant on a plethora of picks. I mean, you could bring up the Tsukiyomi. He's got a couple warriors in the back pocket. The Sun Wukong on screen right now. I wouldn't be overly surprised if we see him shift up his style in this no-boots world to more of that Guardian-centric type of playstyle. Things like the Sobek. I called out, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Jormungandr at some point this week. I'm very excited for this matchup here today, but Variety is coming in as the favorite. I don't think there's any hairs to be split here. There's no hms or ha's to be had. He really is a heavy favorite in this matchup.
And last week when we saw him still making sure that he does have that little bit of warrior presence, the tier gameplay coming in hot for the Camelot Kings, and Variety as well, kind of being a centerpiece for this team, having so much experience as such a veteran member for this roster. But more importantly, Mifflin, do you feel as though the solo lane meta has really changed all that much? I know that we're seeing Guardians now with the mid-season changes and no boots being a factor anymore, but is it solo lane specifically that's affected, or just the entirety of the map?
Well, everyone's affected to differing degrees, right? But solo lane, I think, has had some pretty nice shift-ups. You can go towards that mask and then immediately in towards a dedicated defense item, which is what we've been seeing pretty consistently. Mystical Mail in that first slot very often. And then the second you have that dedicated defense, well, these towers are no longer a threat. Just go ahead and walk on into it, set up for your team. I mean, how often have we seen these solo laners leave lane at level 6, walk into the mid tower and say, all right, guys, get them, and then walk back to their lane?
Well, we've certainly spent enough time gassing Variety up, and actually we're fortunate enough that he's actually going to be joining us on the pre-game interview. So Variety, first things first, are you a little bit jealous that you guys aren't able to come in studios for this set today?
I'd say so, yeah. I'm kind of jealous that we don't have, Big Man and Sam here, because there's great people to be around, so yeah. Soon though, soon.
Soon enough, and surely we all can't wait to see you guys here in the studios. It's been a little bit quiet, without any of the players around, but
yeah,
focusing in on the set today, I asked Mifflin, and I'll have to ask you the same question. Do you really feel as though solo lane meta has been all that impacted by the mid-season change?
I'd say so. I'd say the tank, well, it's mainly just tank boots removals made a lot more things open, and it's a lot easier to play around solo if you want to now. It's a lot easier to kill the enemy solo. It's like, especially with the Gaia nerf too, they're not like unkillable for the first 15 minutes of the game. There is a chance to gank them, get a few kills, get a lead. So yeah.
And what do you think are going to be some of your team's most important features in terms of trying to bring down the Valhalla Valkyries today?
I think it's just going to be bit of a team diff, so anything can happen. We can play through anywhere, and I think we're just the overall better team. So I don't think there's anything special we need to do. It's just more the fact that we're just a better team, so it's just going to be a quick tour.
Very bold statement, but with the way that you guys have been playing, it'll be interesting to see how you plan on backing that up. So good luck in your set today, and thanks so much for joining us on the pregame interview.
Thank you very much.
Doesn't seem as though Variety is all that concerned about this matchup here today, Mifflin. And, well, I say bold, but the confidence, it definitely stems from the fact that the Camelot Kings have been incredibly clean throughout many of their sets in Season 8.
Man, Variety felt like he had less pressure on him than I do when I'm in like the cereal aisle. I'm like, do I want Reese's Puffs? Do I want CTC? I don't know. Variety, we're just the better team. We're gonna walk in and win here today. But he's got his work cut out for him, I'd say.
But it's the trust factor for the entirety of the team. Variety's not really concerned about any specific area because he just knows that everybody has that capability to perform. But when we're looking at the Valhalla Valkyries in comparison, Mifflin, I guess it'd be better to pose the question, what do the Valkyries need to do in terms of adjustments in your eyes in order to try and find themselves in a possible 3-game series or even looking for a 2-0 upset of their own?
Well, if they can work some magic in the P's and B's and get Johnny his Loki, well, that seems to be one recurring factor that has been able to get the Valkyries a couple of dubs throughout. But I think a little bit more so, it's about facilitating Ducky out of the Soul Lane. This guy, I know I said it earlier, Variety is the favorite inside the 1v1, but when Ducky is doing well, when he has the team rallying around him, setting him up for these early leads, you get plays just like you're seeing on the screen. Tier 2 tower dives, 1v3s, setting up for the squad, creating infinite space on gods like King Arthur, like the Sun Wukong. Once he has that level of backing, I think that this player can really step up to the plate.
Ducky, individually speaking, tends to have, I think, relatively strong performances, especially when he's able to get some of those more aggressive solo laners like the King Arthurs, like the Osirises. But with the transition towards Variety starting to look into playing some of those Guardians, do you expect that to be a little bit problematic here for Ducky?
I'm not sure that it's going to be too much of an issue for Ducky. When you talk about the Warriors versus Guardian matchup, it's generally that Guardians can play a little bit safer or in the early game have a little bit higher kill pressure because of the Vampiric Shroud pickup. But if you take a peek at Ducky's God Pool, it's a lot of sustain inside the lane. In particular, the Sun Wukong, he loves going for that Soul Eater, the tier with the power cleave. Going to be able to sustain very well as well. So I'm not overly concerned with his ability to survive in the lane. It's more so his ability to thrive in the lane.
And it's more so the sense where even if Ducky is performing in that solo lane, it's about actually translating any sort of lead that he might build, or even just if he's level with Variety, into a team fighting effect. Because I do feel even when Ducky has had those incredibly strong performances, the Valhalla Valkyries have definitely still managed to find themselves coming up short in some of these games, Mifflin. So do you feel as though it's just like a little bit of a lack in team synergy, or do you think that that's just the overall downfall of like some of the ping factors coming into effect?
It's an amalgamation of all these things that you've already listed. Sometimes it feels like these guys aren't on the same page. How often have we seen all of the Valkyries walk in, and then you pan out to a 4-man death, and Zeros is somewhere else on the map just farming up or trying to shoot his abilities from a little bit further away? How many times have we seen objective calls get held a little bit too long and then get stolen away? I'm talking about Fine OK, just able to walk up with Jinku Bang, things like that. It just feels like the Valkyries are struggling a little bit, and I think you can accredit some of that to the ping issues, but surely this is a pro team. These guys have shown in the past that they have had greatness. They've certainly looked good in individual matches within sets. It's just whether or not they can bring that forward throughout the entirety of a set.
And, well, that all starts with some team play, Mifflin. And as we head into picks and bans for game number 1, already an immediate focus into the front line from the Valhalla Valkyries. They're going to waste no time in taking away that Amir from Genetics. Have to remember, though, Amir, potential flex pick for the Camelot Kings. But I'm liking the response of the rapid fire into eliminating some of those carries that we've seen the Valhalla Valkyries tend to centralize around. Soul, Loki, no longer on the playing field.
That does not feel good for the Valkyries. That Loki is something we identified a little bit earlier on as a win condition for the Valkyries. Johnny looks so good on this pick, but in Season 8 with these late game hyper carries, these auto attack hyper carries out of the jungle getting a little bit easier to come online. I know we talked about it on the waiting room. Kali hasn't looked particularly good here in the SPL as of yet, but if anyone's going to be able to do it, I think it will be Johnny, and it is still available to him. The Valkyries going to have to go a little bit deeper in their god pools, though.
Valhalla Valkyries, however, with that Fenrir ban in that third ban selection, will leave the Tiamat open, and the Camelot Kings, zero hesitation. If you guys were watching the pregame show at all, Tiamat being one of the most frequently locked-in first picks, and can't really blame any of the pro players for wanting to prioritize this god, Mifflin. She kind of just does it all for you.
Yeah, damage, survivability, damage mitigation, long-range CC with the stuns, and she can split push the map. I mean, I could go on. If it's something you want done in your Smite game, Tiamat's going to be able to do it for you. That's why she is the most frequently top pick god here in the SPL. Should have been Gilgamesh, but he's banned out more often. I feel like I won that on a technicality. But the Valkyries on the other side, able to get a pretty nice front line for themselves, Taco. I like this Osiris and this Sobek together. That is initiation and peel already. So now they can focus a little bit more so on their back.
And do you think that this combination of Osiris and Sobek is going to be enough to deal with the backline potential that the Camelot Kings have already introduced, because the On Her now being locked in, Terra becoming a factor as well, could maybe have put a little bit of rain on the Valkyries parade here with some of that backline dive potential out of the Osiris and Sobek. Is this top three the kind of response that you would want to see for the Camelot Kings, or do you think that the Zhang-Kui, Osiris, and Sobek are going to be enough to topple this currently?
I think that the Kings have gotten themselves a very strong top three here, but I'm not going to mince words. I woke up very early this morning to drive someone to the airport at 6 a.m. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't think Zhang-Kui should get picked just about ever. I mean, we have not seen it succeed. It has struggled mightily in every single matchup. It's not one player that's been taking Zhang-Kui and struggling on this pick. It's everyone that has locked in this god has generally lost on it. What does he do well? It's backline dive. We were talking about a little bit earlier that the Valkyries were looking for that style of draft. Zhang-Kui fits it, but he needs a little bit of time to come online. He's going to need a little bit longer to get that movement speed as well, as you now get it scaling throughout the levels. I'm not a huge fan of this god. I know he does damage. I know he's got sustain. I know he's got team fight. We just have not seen it work just yet. Maybe the Valkyries can shift up my opinion.
And see, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum here. I actually am a believer nowadays in the Zhang-Kui, especially since the mid-season patch went through. I think that he does have a ton of potential. His burst damage, Mifflin, is very scary. In case anybody isn't aware, there is a way to deal practically 2k damage in a split second. So it's nasty. I don't know if the Valkyries are going to be able to really tap into that potential, because it does introduce a little bit. No, I mean, I'm not banking it on the Valkyries by any means. I'm just saying I think there is a lot of potential still for the Zhang-Kui, and if the Camelot Kings aren't careful, and if they're not respecting the damage that Zhang-Kui can provide, they could find themselves in a little bit of trouble here. But with the Chiron now being locked in, this might be one of the most consistent drafts that we've seen so far from the Valhalla Valkyries, minus the Zhang-Kui acquisition. I know that you're probably not riding too high on this one still, Mifflin, but I do like a lot of the teamfight potential that this Chiron introduces alongside of the Sobek and Osiris.
Their teamfight is great. Sobek has consistent initiation as well as backline peel if he wants to shift up his style. Osiris also going to be running amok in the enemy backline. Zhang-Kui going to match him up there, and even if Chiron wants to play aggressively, he can at least use that Centaurus to maintain his life. If he's going to put himself at risk, well, you might as well have a little bit of death immunity on your side. But what the Kings have drafted already is great counter engage. Tiamat can spawn minions between you and her. You got Terra for that Earthen Fury ultimate, just giving you a little bit of burst healing as well, and the ability to lock down an entire lane with a root, or lock down an entire jungle lane with a stun. Makes it a little bit harder to find those initiations, and now with Jing Chen as well. That is a tough front line to work through for the Valkyries. But as you've already highlighted, Zhang-Kui, great burst damage. They've got great dive already, and now we get a much better look at the Valkyries draft. It's very likely going to be Osiris out of the jungle, which does fit Johnny's style. He likes playing those auto-attack junglers. It's just, I think this King's draft is just so hard to deal with what the Valkyries have.
Especially with the solidification of that Xing 10, because Terra, what's your bet on where the Terra's going?
I'm not betting on anything. Stop trying to get me in trouble.
No bets. All right. Fair enough. I thought third time's a charm, but clearly you were intimidated
Yes.
by SMITE game chat now.
No, I'm intimidated by the
By your bank
the
account.
deepening debt that I'm in. Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough, but
It's not you, chat.
But for real though, the Terra plus the Xing 10, that is an incredibly formidable front line to try and navigate, especially if you are a Jean Kui. I'm expecting the Xing 10 and Terra to just try and play a heavy harassment factor. And not only that, but when you introduce the Robin as well, that is some of the counter engage that I think you were mentioning, Mifflin. Do you think that this Robin is going to be solely dedicated to trying to harass the Jean Kui, or do you think that this is really just pick whoever you want to actually engage on and the Camelot Kings can easily follow it up?
I think this Robin is going to be an opportunistic player. He's going to go for whoever he can. In the early game, likely will be that Jean Kui, who's largely immobile out of the mid lane, doesn't have great damage output until he gets a couple of those items online. But come late game, speaking to your point, the burst damage is there. If at any point the overhead kick is a little bit late and that stun comes through from Jean Kui, well, he's just going to die. This Robin can't really deal with them once they're both 6 slotted. Instead, might shift his attention towards either peeling for his own backline or trying to shut down this Chiron. Either way, I think we will see some aggression from him in the early game towards this Jean.
Well, as excited as we are for these two compositions and seeing how they pan out for both of these respective teams, chat, I just want to let you guys know that we are currently undergoing a quick remake of the matches. Just want to ensure that the ultimate competitive integrity is available for both of these respective rosters, and we'll be right back momentarily, so make sure to use this time to go ahead and grab a snack, because when we get back, all the SMITE game action sure to be taking place. Welcome back, everybody, to the SMITE Pro League, powered by Alienware. And while we're still currently undergoing a little bit of a wait, we've decided to grace you guys once more with myself and Mifflin's presence to talk even more about these beautiful team compositions that are currently taking place. But before we get into all the nitty-gritty details here, Mifflin, I'm really liking that shirt you're wearing, and unfortunately, I have to inform you guys back at home that the Pride Jersey gear no longer available. So if you managed to cop one of those, congratulations. But for the rest of you, don't worry in case you missed out. There's still plenty of primo SMITE Pro League gear that you can choose to pick up for your own sake. And just check out shop.smiteproleague.com. A lot of really cool gear available there to support some of your pros and some of your favorite teams. Of course, those pros usually going to be on your favorite teams. But that's not the only thing that we've got going on for us here today, Mifflin. As you can imagine, like I mentioned, with these two compositions, there is a little bit of an interest in terms of the initial engagement and the counter engagement. Valhalla Valkyries, do you think that they should be the ones leading the charge here?
Certainly in the late game, I think so. They really are going to be relying on this Zhonghui as the core of their damage come late, and we haven't had the opportunity in the SPL to see what Zhonghui can do at that true 6-item slot, get a Potion of Power, maybe Elixir as well. But you've informed me that my man can drop like 2,000 damage in about half a second, so I'm pretty excited to see that one come through. But inside of the early game, despite having a very aggressive Hunter, I think that it's really going to be about the Valkyries biding their time, playing that distinctive European style that we've come to so closely associate with IRAFR. I'm no stranger to that style. I think they can do it. But in the late game, it really is the time to utilize that Zhonghui's damage. But that being said, the King's counter engage only gets better with time. This Earthern Fury from Terra going to make it very hard for this damage output to really ring true, especially when you consider Zhonghui's ultimate is essentially dot damage. You're going to put out those ghosts over a period of time, and as it ticks through, well, you're going to proc that Earthern Fury, which is a burst heal for your team.
And do you expect it to be problematic for the Valhalla Valkyries? Because I'd imagine that they have to focus this Tiamat before anybody else on the King's roster, because on her, while it can be annoying as a Hunter in general, I do feel as though Hunters are a little bit easier to toggle throughout some of these mid to late game teamfight engagements, and the Tiamat, we've seen what Tiamat is capable of, even when it comes to the 1v4, 1v3, 1v5 defenses. So who is supposed to be the ultimate kill factor for the Valhalla Valkyries? Is that going to be coming down to Ducky and Johnny, or should this be kind of like a collective effort from the Valkyries?
I think it's going to be a collective effort, as all matches are, but as far as target selection goes, you can get baited sometimes by Tiamat, who's got a little bit of damage mitigation inside of her kit. Means that, well, in the late game, it's a little bit harder to shut her down when she's in that four-legged stance. So instead, maybe if you can, close the gap on her, and then force the Tiamat, force everyone else to kind of drag themselves out of position as they try and peel out for this ADC. I've been baited a fair bit by Tiamat in the past. I mean, you step up, you hit her while she's in her two-legged bipedal stance, and you're like, okay, she's kind of squishy, kind of easy to shut down. I'm not too concerned about it. And then she switches, and you're like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, sort of ordeal. But getting more into the dual lane, though, for the Valhalla Valkyries. And when we look at this Chiron pick, Chiron certainly been a very popular ADC as of late in Season 8. And we haven't actually seen him all that much, though, since the mid-season patch took place. Why do you think his priority sort of fell off? Because as you can see from the Kings, it was the Apollo and the Chernobog bands that I think ultimately influenced this Chiron to be the next best piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think generally Chiron has fallen off the flavor of the month a little bit here because of the shift in Hunter builds that we've been seeing. It's been a very bow-centric build here for the majority of Hunters on the cast, and, well, Chiron still does need to utilize a little bit of that power buildup. That's why we see Yarkor still going for that Bluestone Transcendence build, so he can still use training exercise to blow people up, so that Centaurus does a ton of damage still, so you can utilize him inside the early game, because Chiron does have the capacity to go for that bow build, but maybe doesn't utilize it as well as some of these other Hunters.
And looking at the Valhalla's Valkyries composition from the overhead view, do you think that this is a comp that can fare well if they fall behind a little bit in the early game?
Well, I've heard from Johnny in the past, having watched his streams. He says once you fall behind on Osiris jungle, you're essentially the worst jungler in the game. That seems to be a general theme on the junglers that he likes. So is Zhong Kui from behind doesn't feel too great either. Chiron from behind, well, you can at least use that death immunity. No, that doesn't feel too good either. You want to have at least a lead remain even with this Valkyries draft.
Well, we're not going to let it wait any longer. We've got the Camelot Kings versus the Valhalla Valkyries coming up first, and we've got J-Mac and Aggro on the cast.
Thank you, Taco and Mifflin. Jumping right into this one, Aggro. I've noticed a commonality with games that we've cast recently, and that's Zhong Kui has been in both of the last couple of games that we've had together here. Last time it didn't perform so well. We'll have to see how it does here up against the Kings.
Yeah, I mean, your memory's better than mine, first and foremost. But Zhong Kui, you know, Taco and Miff were talking on the desk about how good they think Zhong is after the midseason patch. I think I'm more on Taco's side, that I am a believer in this pick, but already I'm seeing something that I don't love here from Zeros. I really think that to really maximize Zhong Kui, I want Blink and I want Aegis, because if I go Blink Beads, then I'm just going to get sundered by someone and insta-die. And that's my concern here for Zeros on the Zhong Kui pick. If he can avoid getting sundered, and there are no sunders so far for the Camelot Kings, a good start for him, then I think that you can potentially go Blink and really use this as a backline dive option. I just don't think Zhong kills frontline super well. I think he kills backline really, really well. And without Blink, he doesn't have a way to get there.
I'll jump in by Netra looking for a box match against Emil. Raffer is going to be there to body block him out just a little bit onto it. And I kind of agree with you on that Zhong Kui. I think he needs that Blink. I think he needs that Aegis. Otherwise, he just dies the second he even attempts to get into that backline. Netra again going to go in aggressively with a nice impale. But Emil is going to make his way out.
Still got the beads out from Emilito. At the end of the day, that's a good power spike win there for the Camelot Kings, being able to hit level 2 a little bit earlier for the Hunter, where Raffer hits level 2, must have absorbed that extra minion. These benevolent starts end up, you gotta be, your math has to be on point for how long, how many creeps it takes for you to hit level 2 versus your support. It's a whole math equation basically every single game. And now that ML has hit level 2, he can step up and actually be a participant in this lane. But going overall for this Valkyries composition, I think that this duo lane should be fairly safe. I don't think that Twig is going to be spending a whole lot of time over here. Chiron, fairly easy to kill for a lot of different hunters, but I think you're kind of leaving Netrioid on his own in this matchup. And I think you're looking at mid lane, because Zhong Kui is one of those gods that if he gets rooted, it feels like it's a death sentence immediately. If Twig goes with something like the Blink Sunder, as he's been known to do, I imagine that he's going to be spending a lot of time in mid around Zeros.
And I think Netroid's probably one of the better hunters to kind of just leave here early on. I mean, last week we saw him go up against that man and get a nice little solo kill onto him on this on-her of all gods. So Netroid's shown that he's fine with this on-her. You can leave him alone probably as early as possible. I don't imagine Genetics will stick around for too much longer, maybe just try and get a tad bit extra pressure. But you can already see Netroid's a solid half level or so up ahead of Emilitu. Raffer, I think, is kind of one of the big question marks maybe with this Camelot Kings team. It seems that Raffer hasn't had the most success in the solo lane. Do you think that this Sobek is one of the better calls for him of the Guardians that are out there?
I mean, it's very survivable. It's straightforward. You've got one job, and that's to initiate and then live and get out. And Sobek has maybe some of the best tools in the entire game in order to do that. So in that way, yeah, I do like it for Raffer. The problem is that sometimes against Sobek compositions, if they don't have enough pressure on your beads, you can just beads and beads the pluck and kill the Sobek. And I think that's going to be the question mark for Raffer, is can other players get enough beads for his initiations to actually be worthwhile? Because if it's a Fire Giant fight in the late game, and that's the only guy you have to worry about, it should be an easy beads the initiation and then turn and burn on the support.
Yeah, it kind of does feel that way with the beads. It feels like Sobek's one of the only ones who's going to be really getting these beads. I mean, you're going to beads maybe the Tiger Stun out of Ducky, and if Johnny gets the tether on you and you can't get out of range, maybe that's about it on top of that. Outside of that, it does feel like it might be a bit of a struggle here for Raffer. Kind of going back to Johnny here, you know, Desk was talking about how Kali is kind of one of his go-to picks up. Osiris, way back in the day, was basically just the warrior Kali. Do you think he'll have that same level of success that maybe Captain Twig was having on it last weekend?
Yeah, I think Osiris jungle's really good right now. I like the mannequin start. I think anytime you're going to be able to rush stone cutting in this meta, you're going to be feeling pretty good about your odds. Really good impale there from Netrioid, but the knockback immunity on the dash for Emilito was better in order to make sure he lives. Overall, I think Osiris jungle is in a really good spot. I'm a little concerned that this Camelot Kings lineup is difficult to kill. They've got great mobility, they've got great tankiness, they've got great CC really across the board. I don't know if this Osiris is going to be able to whittle down these tankier characters. He's going to have to go for a little bit more pen in this build. Maybe something like an Executioner. I don't think just stone cutting and mannequins is going to be enough damage. That's where I really like Osiris, when you can go mannequins, stone cutting, void shield, Pridwin, this really mostly defensive and relying on your low cooldowns and your basic attacks in order to whittle down mages and hunters who really can't afford to trade into you or get away from you. I don't know if that's the case here for the Kings draft. I think that Johnny's going to have to spend a lot more time attacking than you normally would against most compositions. So I'm interested to see how his build adapts to what the Kings have done.
Looking across the board here, just in the gold department, a couple hundred gold separate the teams early on. 5 minutes, no kills. Kind of expect gold to be fairly even, just a few hundred back and forth for the Valkyries. Ducky getting a little bit of a lead there into the solo. I don't know if you noticed the nice little blink to steal away the Scorpion, a little bit of a cheeky play. We've been seeing a little bit of that aggressive Scorpion play. We saw it on the tier last week as well, pushing them away to get the last basic attack for it. So we've been seeing a little bit of fighting over that Scorpion, where it doesn't seem like that's a huge objective that you really want to have a lot of pressure and fight pressure towards.
No, but let's be real, J-Mac. They just get bored over there. I imagine I would be getting bored. You know, you gotta be blinking for something at some point. And now that his ultimate is coming back up, I don't think he's in any real danger in this lane. I mean, Variety is not looking to solo kill you ever. He is looking to team fight come the mid to late game on this Xing Chen, which I'm not surprised to see show up in the solo lane. I think with how good Vampiric Shroud is right now and how you can really get away with these sorts of gods in the solo lane, it means that you can really come in and team fight really well in the later stages. Interesting to me that Ducky goes with that Talisman of Energy first and foremost. Wukong we normally know is this very aggressive god out of solo. You'll see him build things like Bluestone and a Soul Leader, you know, much more offensive oriented, probably the most offensive pick we have right now in the meta in solo. But nothing offensive about the build so far for Ducky. It's Warrior's Axe into Talisman of Energy. That's a lot of defense for a Wukong. I wonder how much threat he's really going to be able to put on, again, a tanky Kings roster.
And I think maybe that's kind of attributed to Variety here, going for this more team fight-oriented Guardian. Do you think that maybe Ducky's adapting that style? Well, I'm never going to kill this Xing Chen. He's never going to want to fight me, so maybe is he just kind of building towards that team fight stage as early as possible?
Yeah, I think that's the idea, but I'm a little surprised by that thought process from Ducky. I would have thought that he would go for, well, I'm not going to get punished for being not tanky, so I'll be able to build whatever I want.
One more spear is all that's going to be necessary. They'll jump in with a basic attack. Netroid strikes first blood in the duo lane for the Kings. A little bit of a sloppy first blood there, a little bit of miscommunication onto that, missed the impale afterward as well onto it. But Kings up first on the board.
Hey, this duo lane really continues to keep the pressure up. They got that Draugr already, and then head on over and keep the pressure up on this purple. But they're going to need Twig, and he's going towards the right-hand side towards this blue buff.
Johnny's going right in. Netroid has no mana. He's going to have to step in the way, and Johnny will burn down the Hunter, taking him out and putting the Valkyries with a quick response back onto the board. Now looking for Ducky, but he's got his ultimate. He'll go right up onto the Somersault Cloud. He'll steal the Scorpion away there for the Kings. But getting Ducky's ultimate, a big one for him. Twig still holding on to his.
A rare misplay on the map there from the Kings with Twig. I mean, they had red buff and purple buff up on the Valkyrie side of the map. Kings with pressure, they just killed Raffer. Yes, Genetics and Netroid had just used their ultimates, but I think they might have been able to make it work if Twig had been on the way. But instead, Twig goes over for a low percentage gank over on Ducky, a Wukong who has defense and who has ultimate and who has blink up. I think Twig either needs to say, hey, don't go to that purple. I'm going to the right-hand side. I need to get Variety his blue buff. I need to make sure that he's scaling into the later stages. Or Twig needs to actually go over to the left-hand side and assist on that invade.
Well, with it, that puts at least the boards and the gold even back across the board. Even with that first blood bounty that the Kings got, it immediately got shut back down by killing the person who got the first blood onto it. So Netroid now sitting at the 1-1, and we are seeing the traditional, more bow-style start out of Netroid, going for that Ichval. We're on the flip side, we are still seeing this more power-based Chiron. They talked about on the desk where Chiron just kind of fell out of favor, but I mean, he still does a lot of damage.
Still does a lot of damage, still has great utility among your team. I mean, you're looking at very telegraphed CC from the King's draft. It's a root from Ravin, it's an impale from Netroid, you know, the stun from Tiamat, and then of course the Xing Chen CC, both in terms of the root and the ultimate, those are really easy abilities to cleanse the vast majority of the time. So Emilito is going to have to make sure that this training exercise is getting really good value in the mid to late game in order to really maximize this pick.
Johnny's not having a fun time with Twig over here. The Tether's going to get immune. Johnny's going to get rooted out. Ultimate by Variety will force the Lord of the Afterlife out of Johnny as well. So he's going to have to go right back into the tower. They'll lose out on that Scorpion. Well, maybe not. Ducky here caused a bit of a stir, but ultimately that one will go their way. And Ducky's got to ult yet again just to get out of danger. 3 members of the Kings not able to take him down, but at least steal the Scorpion away.
Yeah, I mean, it's good pressure there from the Kings. Variety is using his ultimate liberally and for good reason. He's already got the 20% CDR coming from that Breastplate of Valor. But Ducky is gaining a lead in this lane. I mean, he's level 12, Variety just now hitting level 11. These extra little neutral camps, these extra harpies that are just off the solo lane, those have really started to add up, I'd imagine, for Ducky, and that's what's really increased this lead to a pretty formidable point. I mean, he's able to back by a full Void Shield, and he goes Sunder right off the bat. So now, if I'm Ducky, as soon as my Blink is up, as soon as my ultimate is up, I probably want to get involved. I want to get over towards this mid lane, try and put some pressure onto Big Man Tings on this Tiamat, because while you don't have that instant kill potential because of your damage, like you normally would on Wukong at this point in the game, you've got so much more defense, you've got so much more survivability, particularly up against the mid lane mage, where normally you wouldn't be going for something like Talisman of Energy first and foremost. Now you've got that magical protection, a little bit of pen there for Big Man, but not enough to really threaten this Wukong at this point in the game. I'd love to see Ducky rotate early and aggressively and try and transition this lead towards zeros in the mid.
Well, and with that Sunder, we do see the Blink Sunder, so a very aggressive set of relics for Ducky, where Variety has gone for the teleport early on. How is having, or lacking that initiation or that, team fight style relic out of Variety, how's that going to affect their team fights?
Well, it depends on what he goes at 12. He's just hit it now, so whenever he backs, we'll see what he elects for. I'd be shocked if he went for anything but Blink right now, because you've got Twig to do some initiation as well.
Well, Johnny's taking about half of his health, and now Captain Twig is on the run. Big Man Ting joins the midst of the fray, gets the knock him onto Johnny. Variety's going to chase him down while Twig is being chased by Ducky and Raffer. Ducky up onto the Somersault Cloud looking for the slam down, but not going to like to go for it just yet. Now he got his eyes set on Genetics. Misses the damage from it and misses the Master's Will afterwards, so Genetics is fine for the time being. A lot of team fights scattering around, a lot of ultimates burned, but nobody will fall just yet.
Yeah, that Sunder didn't really get used there from Ducky. Feel like they needed that if they really wanted to kill Twig in that moment. Was very surprised that Johnny managed to get away. He held his ultimate until really the midnight hour in that engagement, but still managed to escape, so baited as much as he possibly could in that moment. These team fights, the more condensed they are, the better for the Camelot Kings. They've got the healing from the Terra, they've got this Xingqian ultimate. The Valkyries, they want these team fights to be spread out and a little bit more dive-oriented.
Well, I got the beads out of Johnny there off the ult from Variety. Ducky's going to be forced to leap or dash away there with that Ox transformation. Big Man Tings will be the one who finds him and just trying to keep him poked out while the rest of his team was dealing with Johnny, keeping him pushed away as well. Genetics now under half health. The Scorpion has respawned on the side of the map for the Valkyries. They're still trying to establish that presence in the mid lane. You can see about 1,000 gold lead has gone the way of the Camelot Kings, despite only having the 1 kill earlier on.
Yeah, they've been able to really keep this duo lane pressure up. Netrioid has been able to solo farm a little bit more than Emilito, but on the opposite side of the map, Ducky is doing a little bit better than Variety thus far. So it's really a matter of how well can Ducky execute these dives, and can he really make an impact on this Wukong in comparison to Variety, who is really playing for this point in the game. Got through your worst part of your game early on this Xingqian. You don't need to make a big impact there. It's really now in the mid-game and for the rest of this match, what is he going to be able to output and how much control is he going to be able to bring to this draft?
A nice stun there by Tings will make sure that Genetics get back to safety in the tower. Raffer was the one on the forefront of it, but not able to find anything from it. Big Man Tings just kind of playing this more zoning style mage here with this Tiamat. A lot of CC, a lot of damage, a lot of utility comes with this god, and we're seeing a lot of players, again, kind of prioritize towards it, but we've been seeing a lot of differentiations in the builds. I know that Paul's been liking to go for this more lifesteal style build, where other players are kind of doing this kind of mixed hybrid of what we saw for traditional mages last time, a lot more burst power in their build.
Yeah, it looks like Tings is kind of splitting the difference right now, going for a soul gem early, but look at this, Twig in trouble.
Twig's going to have to use his ultimate over the wall. Limilitu's going to find one snipe, but not the second. With the heals in that Lotus Crown, Twig will be more than happy to take that one for himself, though he's going to lose out on his own ultimate for the Mystic Rush expended just to get out. Still,
Raffer used the blink, Emilito used the ultimate. Pretty even so far, and that's really been what the Valkyries needed. As Mifflin was talking about on the desk, this composition really cannot afford to fall behind, but at the same time, the Kings are not looking to really blow you out early with their draft. I mean, every single time Genetics locks in this Terra, I feel like the Kings play this very methodical, slow-paced, let's just make sure we get to late game and we are favored once we get there, because Terra Ultimate is so good in the late game and her control is so good that it's very difficult to take her down. Plus, you add in the Xing Chen. I mean, this Camelot Kings draft was never intended to really hit the ground running early on. Tiamat scales much better in the late game, and not very good early game by my estimation. This Kings draft really wants to get to 25 minutes before they start fighting you, because they are in such a good spot to do so, whereas the Valkyries, yes, they've got some good Death Ball tools. Zhonghui, Osiris, Wukong, these gods just hold W at you in the late game, and those can be difficult to deal with, but with the amount of peel and frontline the Kings draft has, I think the Valkyries needed to play a little bit more aggressive early on. I don't think it's great for them that they're tied 16 in.
Well, Raffer's going to try and stop this Gold Fury, but he'll be turned on and burned down so quickly. Not even a chance to get into that lurking in the water. In the back, Variety goes. He's going to get the beads out of Zeros, who's just trying to run away as fast as he can. Pops that ultimate just to let some of the ghosts run through, but Variety does not care about the damage at all. He'll get a nice little solo kill in the back line, while they also force Johnny away. Big Man Ting's chasing him out. Full health still on this mage. Ducky's made his rotation over, but I don't think he's going to have much success for it as well. Go Fury stopped for the moment, but immediately the Kings go right back to it.
Man, that Sunder and the CC chain onto Raffer was just picture perfect there from the Kings. When Raffer can't get the ultimate off, can't get the Sunder off, his blink was still down, you're not going to have a great team fight from that position. The Kings really started that one 5v4, and the Valkyries never had a chance to use the strength of their composition, which is not running. It's not running away, I should say. It's running at you. It's getting into your backline. Anytime Zeros is seeing Variety in these fights, it's a bad start for the Valkyries. He cannot be the one getting engaged upon by the Xing Chen. He puts no threat on the Xing Chen whatsoever.
Leap in by Netroid onto Emily. He's forced to run the opposite direction, but Netroid kind of low on mana here. Might be trying to bait as long as he can, but Emil doesn't have a path to kind of safely get back here. Netroid's still waiting for that impale to come back up. Quick giddy up from Elitu. He's going to stop right at the tower line, because look who's on the way. Johnny and Zeros. Netroid low on mana. Centaurus thrown out. Genetics is here to play defense for it, but how much of a defense can he put out, because Raffer and Johnny are cutting off the path for Netroid. Instantly goes onto the Hunter. Nice little disperse. It's going to get him out for a moment, but Emily2's got the last basic necessary. Now Tings and Zeros have also rotated across the board. Ultimate in with the Mystic Rush by Captain Twig. He'll take down Zeros, but Johnny will fall instantly to Big Man Tings. And Emily2, who was just so safe earlier on, may be in a bit of danger now. Genex chasing him down while Ducky takes Twig out into the backline, but Genex doesn't have the damage to kill this Hunter. He's going to need a little bit of help from Variety, who's going to dive down into the tower and take down the Hunter. For a moment there, Aegis keeps him alive for the time being, but that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel will be more than enough to take down the Hunter. Big Man Tings now with the rest of them, all three diving into the tower. Raffer low, Ducky low as well. He'll have to go up onto the Somersault Cloud. Nice little route. Variety staying alive. The Sunder has been putting in great work for him. Ducky gonna manage to find him with the Master's Will. Might find Genetics as well. Knock up out of Big Man Tings will same for the time being. Raffer comes back in with the Sickening Strike. He's gonna have to immediately dash his swim back out, and Ducky picks up another kill. Put 3 on the board now for the solo laner, but I think Tings has more to say about that one. He's going to get a nice little slow ruination on the back end of that one, and Raffer gonna make it out.
Man, what a crazy team fight that was. Take a breath, J-Mac. Camelot Kings really get... Netroid goes a little bit too far forward. A good bait coming from Emilito. And Johnny's right there, right on time, but Zeros just didn't get to play that team fight again. He just got met in the jungle by Tings, who now has a 3 level lead over this Zhonghui. And this is not a pick that can really afford to fall this far behind. I mean, once he hits level 20, gets his items, it won't matter. But it's going to be a little bit until he gets there. He's down a full item to big man Tings right now. And it is not a cheap item. Typhon's Fang, pretty expensive. You're not really feeling good when you press tab and you're in Zero's position, whereas Tings, he knows that he's really, who does he have to really worry about? Johnny probably doesn't have the damage, to take him down at this point, especially not with this amount of lifesteal that big man Tings has. And Zero's is the only one with anti-heal, and we're one-shotting him every fight, so who cares? We don't have to worry about that.
I mean, you're looking at what? 4 forms of lifesteal there for big man Tings on that one. I mean,
plus the passive
onto it as well, so he's gonna also get that damage mitigation with it. I mean, I don't see a world where big man Tings dies unless at least minimum 3 people just deathball at him, but then you throw 3 people at deathball a level 20 Tiamat, goes in a grounded stance, uses that ultimate. She's not dying. However, Zeros, he's not going to get a chance to see anything in that fight. He's going to get blown up immediately. Big man Tings, again, getting the credit for that one. 3 up on the board for him.
Yeah, I just feel like the overall game plan here for the Valks got a little bit lost in what the Kings were doing at their slower pace. I think the Valkyries needed to play aggressive early, and once you get to this point against this composition for the Kings, I don't know your recourse, because this is where the Kings drafted for.
So far, Zeros has 1/2 of the picture on the board for his relics. He got the blink, but unfortunately, he doesn't have a chance to use that blink. Valkyries never got a lead for him. He's behind in level, so at this point, blink can only be used offensively for him, and he doesn't even have an opportunity to be offensive here. Johnny is trying for it onto Netroid, immediately uses that ultimate, and Johnny has no chance of making it out of there. Captain Twig will pick him up on the back end. Emilitu now going to have to use as much as he can to survive, but he has no chance of getting out as well. Bit of a delayed Aegis, and that's going to guarantee a dead double kill there for Captain Twig.
And this is where the Kings draft just becomes unstoppable. They're grouped up. They're using the sustain from genetics. There's no answer to that on the other side. Again, like I said, only 1 anti-heal here for Zeros, and he's been dead the vast majority of these engagements. Look at his player damage. I mean, he's not even at 4,000 quite yet, barely topping that of Raffer.
Not a good look when your mid lane mage is almost 16,000, 17,000 damage below the opposition. Onto that one, you can see the Tiamat topping the charts at 21,000 player damage for big man Tings. No surprise with the build, but kind of no surprise as well for how active he's been in these fights.
Yeah, the difference in player damage between Tings and Zeros would be the 2nd highest player damage in the game, if that was its own number right now. So that's not I think that really spells the whole story for this game. I don't know, man. I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch all of last week, but by looking at the stats, Tiamat got through a lot. She gets through again here for the Kings, and look, she doesn't put pressure on the map via split push anymore, really, very much at all. You need so many waves in order to get that done. If we thought that was the only reason she was good, it might be time to reevaluate, because she's looking pretty good.
I mean, Hariwind, I believe, got 2 games on her last week, performed very well on both those. I think he started off with a 4-0 at one point onto that mage with his early aggression he got against, I think, he's even against the Valkyries. I don't know why the Valkyries keep giving this Tiamat over to opposition, because so far they haven't had a great answer to it. Raffer already down to half health, Ducky in the midst of the fray. That's a knock up to Centaurus in the back by Emilitu, who's going to push Netroid out. But Variety and Genetics are very healthy, and big man Tings is soloing Zeros on the far side. That's going to get the beads, and the Whirlwind comes out from Variety, sets up for the Desert's Fury at a Netroid. It slams through 3, kills 1, and looking for 1 more on the back. Johnny going to throw out the sickle, but it's going to be all for naught. Nice little blink will stop for the auto attack, but Captain Twig will be the one to go on the chase. Overhead kick will take him down, while Variety picks up another on the back. 3 kills on the board for the Kings in just that fight.
The Kings really did such a good job. They grouped up for a moment, let Genetics hit that Earth and Fury on the whole team, and then spread out again. Twig won his one up against Zeros. He absorbed that entire ultimate from the Zhang Kui, and then dipped at the last second, let Big Man come in and really make sure that Zeros couldn't participate in that fight anymore. A good ultimate from Variety. The team play from the Kings has been really their hallmark, their calling card for the vast majority of the year, and it was on display there again.
Well, another 4,000 player damage on the board just for Big Man in that one fight. Now, I know we're not supposed to do any kind of math on the cast, but looking at the bottom 4 members of the Valkyries, he beats all 4 of them combined in player damage.
With room to spare at that. So this Tiamat continues to be an absolute nightmare for the Valhalla Valkyries. at this point, I mean, you look at all this healing that they have on their side, the damage coming from big man Tings. That was my one concern with this draft for the Kings is they are a little bit damage light. They have difficulty getting their damage off at times in the late game team fights, but their front line is so staunch that they buy so much time for big man to get off his damage and Netroid to get off his damage. Netroid really had to jump away early in that last fight, and it still didn't matter because Twig was able to get all of his damage off on the zeros. He won his 1v1 there, and I just don't know who's killing Variety from this position. This build that Emilito has is ill-equipped to do so. Zeros, I just don't think Zhonghui kills tanks particularly well in general, and he's built well enough, 20% pen so far, but that's not going to get the job done. He needs really 40% up against this draft from the Kings.
And as we get closer to these Phoenix pushes, I mean, we already saw one Phoenix on the left-hand side go down, the right one is down as well, and so is Johnny. He'll go back to the fountain after being chased out by the mage. Well, this last Phoenix that's sitting up, is there any shot that the Valkyries can defend this one, or is it just going to take the Camelot Kings to just W key into the fountain at this point for them to get that kill?
They need to make a mistake from this position. The Kings have this one in hand. They just got to make sure they don't mess it up from here.
Well, it's going to be 4 on the defense. All 3 Phoenixes down. The Camelot Kings pushing forward. Genetics is going to be the one at the forefront of the throne room. Ruination's going to just do some nice zoning for them. And Tinks is going to throw out the Tempest just to keep Rapper pushed away. Variety going to get a nice little knock-up. Netroid will pick up one. Get another one onto the board. Why not? The Titan getting low. Big man Tinks will pick up a third one, and they're going to close this one out cleanly for themselves. 18-5. Read the scoreboard. Titan falls. And the Kings put up another kill for themselves.
Look, I mean, overall, I think that the Valkyries came in with a pretty cohesive draft. I think it had chances to work. It just, they didn't, they got the pieces. I just don't think they executed on those pieces particularly well. Whereas the Kings came in with their game plan. They knew the Valkyries might not try and gun them down early. And if you get to late game with a composition with Xingqian, Terra, Tiamat, your chances of losing are single digits. I mean, you're in such a good spot. I like what the Valkyries were doing. Just got to turn up that aggression a little bit. They got to really get the ball rolling in the early game if the Kings are going to try and draft the way they did.
Well, the death ball comp out of the Valkyries did not come up favorable for them. Well, let's see if they can pick it up in game 2. We'll take it to a break, and we'll come back with the desk.
fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's @Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Welcome back, SMITE fans, to the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And for any of you that might have just missed it and the video that played, Aggro was not messing around, and neither were any of the players in that segment. This Alienware gear cannot be more primo, chat, and this is stuff that you're going to want to get your hands on. It's not just desktops and laptops that are available. There's also an assortment of monitors, there's gaming headsets, there's mice, just about everything you could imagine and need for your own peripheral setup back at home. So make sure to head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware and make sure to plug code SMITEAW for a nice little discount on top of everything else. You can also follow Alienware at Alienware on Instagram and Twitter, as well as join their global arena at alienwarearena.com. But the gear is not the only thing that's making the Camelot Kings look so good here, Mifflin. It's just the gameplay itself, and I especially want to highlight variety on that Ching 10 gameplay. It was very phenomenal, and not on the Ching 10, but it was just a really strong showcase, I think, from the Camelot Kings and that Terra Ching 10 frontline setup.
It was. I mean, you could just point at any singular member of the Camelot Kings in that match and say, all right, diff. Mid diff, solo diff, jungle diff, didn't really matter. The Valkyries got blown out of the water here today. It was a struggle that they brought up on the cast. They said 15 minutes in, when it was 2-2, or 1-1 rather, on the slash lines, well, the Valkyries may have missed a little bit of their opportunity to flourish, if you would. And in particular, I think Zeros really does struggle inside of this one. And I'm not going to go ahead. I'm not going to harp on it. I'm not a loser or whatever, but Zhang Kui again, kind of struggling here in the SPL, Taco. I think it's time to retire this pick.
I don't think the pick is the issue when it comes to the Valhalla Valkyries, Mifflin. Zhang Kui, I'm still going to be on the boat that there is some very strong potential here, just not sold that it is the potential the Valhalla Valkyries need to be trying to tap into. And again, you kind of touched on it during the Analyst Test segment, but the Earthen Fury from that Terra just beautiful counter engagements every single time. Love the groupings from the Kings prior to those team fights. It pretty much negated the entirety of Zero's ultimate, did not really leave that Zhonghui a whole lot of room to operate, if any at all. And then when you have the cleanup factors coming in with the harassment aspects of Raven, Xingtian, it was just so much chaos, it seemed like, for the Valkyries to try and coordinate any sort of effort through.
But we got to give props to the squad that won. 31,000 damage from the mid laner there. Big man Tings making it look easy. Impressive stuff. And let that be a lesson. Don't let him play the Tiamat anymore. I mean, Aggro did bring up she has had some nerfs throughout the year. Can't really split push as well as she used to. Doesn't really need to split push if you're a spearhead that kills everyone in front of you.
And as we head into game number 2, Mifflin, for the picks and bans, you've already kind of touched on the Tiamat, but for those initial bans that we saw the Valhalla Valkyries, do you imagine those to stay the same, or do you expect that Tiamat has to be a priority ban here if the Valhalla Valkyries are going to default to second pick option anyway?
I think the only reason the Valkyries should let Tiamat through is if in some topsy-turvy world it also nets them a Loki pick, because that's Johnny at his best in my mind. I think Johnny on Loki is so much better than any of his, even his second best pick, that it's worth giving up something that the Kings would want, and I think the Kings have accurately identified that as well, Taco.
The Kings do not want to allow Johnny any sort of comfort or luxury with the Loki in his initiation and backline threat potential. Loki, I'd be very surprised to ever see that god in the hands of Johnny, with every team being able to recognize exactly how good he looks on it. The Osiris, on the other hand, didn't completely hate it. Feel as though the early game might have been a little bit more fluid had he actually had a mid laner that he could possibly play a little bit more aggressively through. But for the most part, I do feel like it somewhat accomplished the mission of just harassing the backline.
6,000 damage from the Osiris out of the jungle, 5,000 damage from Raffer out of the support. I'm not sure. Johnny said it before. If you fall behind
Emphasis
on Osiris,
on the early game.
Yeah, if you fall behind, it feels pretty bad in the early. You're feeling pretty all right about your odds, but I wouldn't be overly angry if he goes towards something a little bit different.
Well, the Kings, recognizing the fact that it's not the Fenrir that the Valhalla Valkyries are going to opt to ban away in that third ban selection, it's actually the Tiamat, so they'll adjust accordingly as well. And Osiris, a very nice interchangeable pick option here for the Camelot Kings, could be a signature Osiris gameplay here from Captain Twig, could also potentially be flexed to a variety in that solo lane role. It's really up to the Camelot Kings to decide where they want to go with this one, and they'll get a great opportunity, though, to see exactly what the Valkyries are headed in terms of their composition, and it looks as though they're taking note and just trying to solidify early game options here for Ducky.
Yeah, Sun Wukong, the bread and butter for Ducky out of the soul lane, has good survivability, can rotate out of lane incredibly easily as he is one of the more mobile soul laners we've seen. Also has decent build pass, especially considering no boots, means you can rush that soul leader a little bit more quickly, get those stacks online a little bit more easily as well. They're going to flank that pick with an Athena, and already they've got a pretty strong front line. Consistent engage if anyone's isolated. Sun Wukong's got great single target CC once the team fight phase starts up. I've said it 1,000 times and I'll say it 1,000 more times. Confound, probably the best ability in the game as far as team fights go. Is just great AoE CC. It's hard to argue against Athena.
Well, Camelot Kings, they're not trying to hide any more of their frontline cards. They've decided to just go ahead and show the Valhalla Valkyries exactly what their intentions are. Sobek, Terra, Osiris, having to assume that this is going to be Osiris jungle again for Captain Twig. He's always looked excellent on the pick and been able to establish very clear pressure from the get-go. Do you imagine this to be an issue for that Athena? Because Athena, while she has a lot of global rotation capability, Myth, there's so much early game presence on the side of the Camelot Kings, they might be able to counteract that global effect.
They might be able to, but you're at least going to have the numbers advantage in every single engagement inside the early game for the Valkyries. If a 3v3 happens in mid, well, Apollo can dunk in as well. That's not just Athena bringing that global presence, but it's Apollo as well. So I do like this draft so far from the Valkyries, but I want to see a little bit more consistent damage output. They could shore that up with their mid lane selection, but right now, the Kings have shown their hand, as you've already said. They seem to believe here in this post-boots world that a strong frontline, great initiation, and good peel is the core path towards victory, and they've already selected that in their top 3.
Well, Hobwab Ra gonna join the rest of the bands here for the Valhalla Valkyries, but can't help but notice that Raijin still up for grabs here. That's another pick that we've definitely seen Big Man Things have a lot of success with through the course of Season 8, and the Apollo is an interesting flavor here for the Valhalla Valkyries. Mifflin, not entirely sold that it's necessarily going to be Apollo intended for Emilito. Have to remember that we have seen Johnny try to operate the Apollo jungle in the past, and Valhalla Valkyries, anytime they have this double global introduction to the map, I like the ban from the Camelot Kings of taking away the Chernobog because it kind of eliminates that aspect of the Valhalla Valkyries looking to just dunk one player at one time to try and leverage some of that global pressure.
That is a heads-up call-out. I'd almost erased Apollo Jungle from my mind. Johnny has had some moderate success on it in the past, and, well, a little bit more global presence getting picked up here. Taco Nuwa locked in. Well, I mean, she's going to deal damage from anywhere on the map. Could be towards Emilito, could go towards mid. We don't know just yet, but seeing the draft as it is, I think we got to lean a little bit more so towards the standard. Apollo looking like it is going to be going inside of that duo lane. But here's a spicy pick we got to talk about earlier today in the waiting room. Artemis being hovered, and I really do like this pick if it is what is going to be the selection here for the Kings, because taking a peek at this Valkyries draft, it's a lot of slows already. The Master's Will, the dash from Athena, even the dash from Apollo, all apply slows for CC. Well, Vengeful Assault kind of invalidates that, but it's on her instead, so I kind of wasted my time.
Netroid just going to choose to run it back with the on her. Can't blame him. A lot of pressure in that laning phase. We saw him oftentimes suppressing Emilito 2's T1 tower, although he was punished accordingly on a few of those occasions by the Valhalla Valkyries. Unfortunately, on her still able to make his debut in team fights, and Raijin as well going to make a debut here for Big Man Tinks. Can't say that I'm very surprised. When you look at the front line that the Camelot Kings have afforded themselves, there is just so much peel, so much initiation. This is every backline carry's dream when it comes to setup.
Taco, I was so ready to have an exposition dump as I try to break down this Valkyries draft, but with history being as it is, when we see Neath get locked in, generally it's been going towards zeros out of the mid lane, so you might have been right. Maybe you were being a little bit glib when you called it out, but this Nuwa could be headed over towards the long lane here for the Valkyries with Apollo out of the jungle, Athena inside support, and Sun Wukong solo if the meta is permitting. This draft is high execution. You're lacking in terms of peel, if you would. It's generally a lot of engage here for the Valkyries, whereas the Kings, as far as peel and engage goes, they're going to have the edge. Damage output, I think you might give it over to the Valkyries here.
It's never a joke whenever Nuwa comes into play for a roster that contains Emilito on it at the very least. He is very known to have a tendency to kind of lean into those Nuwa selections. He's a little bit of an off-roll here, and I like that you brought up the fact that it is high execution, but more importantly, Mifflin, I can't help but notice there's a lot of single target focus from this Valhalla Valkyries composition, and if there's one thing that Terra is excellent at, it's negating single target focus. So how do the Valhalla Valkyries need to play in order to find success with this composition up against what the Kings have drafted?
Well, they could look for AoE damage, poke multiple targets, and all of a sudden that Nuwa ultimate is going to be a much larger threat on the field, but
who's doing the poking?
It's got to be the Nuwa, right? It's all up to the Nuwa here. Emilito, you've got your work cut out for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be all single target. Once you've got a god like Athena who can funnel multiple people into one piece of CC, all of a sudden Nuwa, who does struggle to find that AoE damage with the Shining Metal, is going to have a little bit of an easier time. A multi-man confound will generally lead to a multi-man stun, and the damage output is there from this Valkyries draft. If somehow the Kings are able to limp away from these engagements with small amounts of HP, it's not up to the Nuwa herself to finish off these kills, but Neath also has that capacity as well.
I just have so many concerns here for the Valhalla Valkyries because alongside of that single target focus, there's also just the fact that the range might not be enough to match up to that of the Camelot Kings, but we'll find out exactly how it plays out here for the Valhalla Valkyries. We head into game number 2 with J Mac Tucker and Aggro one more time on the call.
Thank you once again onto the desk, and I wasn't going to be a firm believer on this Nuwa going to the duo lane. I do know that Zeros likes this Neath, but when you throw a Nuwa against an on her, I think that's just asking for a level 2 first blood.
Yeah, that is tough in this duo lane, especially once it becomes the 1v1. Now, in game 1, it took a long time for Raffer and Genetics to rotate out of lane. So if that's going to be the post-midseason meta, that supports stay to level 6, level 7, something like that, then Nuwa can have a better time. But as soon as Raffer leaves, I mean, he is just food for Netroid. Now, there is some good news, and this was taught to me a long time ago, J-Mac, by Uzi back in Season 2 when he was always telling me that Nuwa solo was really OP, and I kept saying, Uzi, wouldn't you just get zoned? And he kept saying, no, you can't get zoned on Nuwa because Fog goes the entire length of the lane, pretty much, and your minions can absorb that XP for you. So, at the very least, Emilito can sit really far back and just absorb pressure that way. But he's going to have to sit really far back and absorb pressure that way because I don't know how he lives if he steps up to this on her basically ever.
Well, now, granted, that's also solo lane, much shorter than the duo lane here, so the Fog won't go quite as far. I mean, how far back can you realistically sit and still be able to soak up some of that XP onto this Nuwa? We'll have to see how it goes for him as they're already under tower at just level 2. Twig taking quite a lot of poke, and we saw Johnny pull this pick out last week in Game 2 against the Dragons. Did really well for them, had 100% kill participation onto it, made the pick work really well for him. I'm just looking at this composition for the Valhalla Valkyries, and this just looks like a really scrappy team.
It finishes kills really well between the Nuwa and the Neath and the Apollo. All three of those gods do a great job of finishing off low health targets. The problem is how do you get them low in the first place? But this composition kills tanks way better than their Game 1 composition. I mean, you just go the shredding build right now, the bow build, for these ADCs. Nuwa obviously thought of in terms of her ultimate come late game and what she does there, but I think her true identity in the vast majority of team fights is that she kills tanks really well with the prot shred from her 2 roots. Oftentimes are pretty devastating to tanks. So you got a root built into the kit from your passive, one of the best passives in the whole game, and then this big minion combo that'll do a lot of damage to tanks. The Valkyries also scale really well into the game because they've got 2 hunters and a Nuwa, whereas the Kings, you know they're going to try and go for a slow pace with this Terra and Sobek's frontline combo. I like where the Valkyries have ended up. I don't know if it's going to work, but I like the theory behind it.
I like the answer there for Genetics. They decide to dive onto Netroid a little bit, put some poke onto him, but Genetics instantly steals away that purple buff in response for it and puts Valkyries just a little further behind. Now he's buying their time here into the jungle, just taking a nice leisurely stroll through the jungle. He's going to get met by Raffer and Zeros. He'll lose about half his health. Not any major danger just yet, especially because Johnny hasn't made his rotation over, and now that he's got Tings, he's completely fine. In fact, they might be able to turn something around here. Ting's going to throw out the ultimate just to dissuade the Valkyries from pushing any further, as Emil is still pushing Netroid under tower, but I think that comes from the initiation earlier on.
Yeah, this is the poke earlier from Raffer and Emilito really coming to bear here for Netroid, but Netroid hits level 5, Emilito has to respect it now. I don't know if Netroid will die to a full combo, but I'm a little surprised. Netroid feels like he might have, because otherwise I don't think there's any way he pushes that wave like that. He just wants to back, heal up, reset, and get in a position where he can really come back into this lane and dominate it as you would expect.
Well, Johnny going to be going towards the Transcendence route yet again, I imagine, with this Apollo. It's what he ran last week in that same jungle position. Still kind of that slower pace that we saw from game number 1. Teams wanting to get something going, but not really having that pressure just yet onto it. We do see the immediate Sunder pickup out of Raffer compared to the second item Sunder last game. How does it going the Sunder first item really affect that dueling comparatively?
It helped in their poke battle considerably in the early stages. It's what gave them lane pressure because of all the damage that they were able to throw out. I like it a lot on Athena. Blink is obviously good on her, but don't need it, especially in the early game. You kind of need it later on. If anything else, in the early game, you just want to add some extra damage to your combo, and Sunder does that better than anything. It's guaranteed. You're going to confound and then Sunder, and can't miss that. So you're going to be able to put out a lot more damage more consistently, and Sunder's just arguably the best relic in the whole game right now. So getting it early is never a bad thing.
And you get 2 of them. You get 2 Sunders now.
Yeah, 2 charges.
Man, when I saw a double Sunder pop up, I said, man, supports are going to be really fun to play now, especially if you have one that can set up for the Sunder so easily. Yamoja, Athena, Genetics, not able to steal that one away. And this time we'll go over to the way of Emilito, so he'll get his purple buff on this spawn of it. But Genetics now level 5, Netroid level 6 on this on her. but not looking for as much fighting across the map this time around. Still kind of waiting to see where Raffer is going to make his major aggression with that Defender of Olympus. Where do you think he tries to put that pressure?
I think it's really just in response to if the Kings get aggressive, but I don't really see the Valkyries getting particularly aggressive with this composition. I don't see the Kings getting aggressive with their composition. I think they're going to wait until the later stages.
Oh, there's the responsive ultimate immediately. Emil's going to be fine because of it, and I don't really think he was in that much danger even if they didn't use it onto it. Those spears not hitting super hard early on, not a lot of power in this early build for these Hunters. It's a lot more of the basic attack trades that they want this early on.
Yeah, but Nuwa just so susceptible to something like a Terra Root that it makes sense that Raffer wants to ensure that Emilito is okay in that lane. But now, no beads for Emilito, no ultimate from Raffer. I do think that's a big part of when you were going to be using that Defender of Olympus, is just to come back over and support Emil whenever Netroid jumps in on him. Without either of those tools, Netroid's going to go back, he's going to finish off his Ichaival, and I think I'm jumping every wave if I'm Netroid. You just shouldn't be letting Emilito get any farm for free at this point in your builds. Netroid is spiked really hard. Emilito gets a nice power spike too from the Charons, but that does not match anywhere near the early pressure of something like an Ichaival does.
And I think one big question that comes up with these Hunters, the bow build is so powerful right now, especially for gods with stims. We did see, the Chiron last game go more towards the power build. Where does Neith kind of fit in this new Hunter meta with these two branching build paths? Does she need to go the power build? Does she have to go the bow build to keep up? I mean, where does she kind of fall in line here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really sure quite yet. I would have probably leaned towards more Bluestone Transcendence, but it seems like Zero's is going the other way. And I think that it can work on either direction. It's just a matter of the play style, how often you want to use your ultimate.
Johnny and Ducky going to get a lot of assist here in trying to take down Captain Twig, but it's not quite enough yet. Ducky's going to blink in and immediately get flung back by Variety. Twig with the double ultimate there out of the side of the Valkyries only barely gets under half health.
Yeah, still pretty tanky for this Osiris. He had his passive pretty well stacked up, I think. Had the tether, of course, onto Johnny and Ducky, so reducing their damage pretty significantly. That damage isn't going to stay low forever, though. I mean, Zero's is only going to deal more with that World Weaver. Of course, Emilito is going to scale up his damage pretty significantly. But this is where you got to be a little bit scared, is I've used my ultimate now if I'm Nuwa. I don't have my beads still. I'm surprised that Netroid is letting him survive in this lane, and Emilito's treading water as well as he is.
Well, there's the immediate leap in by Netroid. Going to try and get a few basics in to stack up the power for that Desert's Fury. Nice minion stun and a missed impale by Netroid will spell the end of that fight for them. For now, though, we do see Genetics
Here comes Johnny,
making that slow rotation through. Johnny in the sky looking for his target, but cannot find Netroid. Genetics makes his way back into the wings, trying to get that dive, but going to be unsuccessful for it. And once again, Defender of Olympus comes out defensively, and Johnny never landed. He's right back into the fray, but he doesn't really have the mana to continue this chase.
No, had to choose between So Beautiful and the moves, and he went with the non-dash option because he knew Twig might be on the way. Good pressure for onto this duo lane. This is what you need to do to the Nuwa lane.
Well, they're going to continue this fight here. Even Tings has made his rotation through. Root not out yet by Genetics, but they don't need it. Taiko Drums will take him down, though. Johnny turns it around and immediately gets a response kill onto Genetics. Almost took out Emilito there, but not quite enough damage.
I'm really surprised that Tings didn't just hit the backline. I mean, Emil was so low, Johnny was so low, completely out of mana. Maybe Tings had jumped in order to get into range, but I think if you just 2-3 the Nuwa there, she dies to that damage alone. Then you've got Taiko Drums to kill the Apollo. And let your teammates deal with the Athena. Who cares about Raffer? He's the tankiest target, and he was awfully healthy in comparison, even if he was in significantly worse position. I don't know if Tings just didn't have the Thunder Crash available or what, but didn't love his target selection in that play.
Now, a little bit sloppy on his end for it, and that's out a 1-1 trade out for Kings do get first blood, and wow, I just looked up at the gold here. Look at that 2,500 gold already separating these two teams, and on a 1-1, I mean, where did that lead come from?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, Genetics has a 400 gold lead over Raffer. You look at Variety over here in the solo lane. He's actually got a pretty big lead over Ducky this time around in a similar matchup.
Oh, Emil's not in a good position there. Impale will take him down, and yeah.
That's what should happen in that matchup every single time. There is no reason that Emilito should ever get a wave for free in this matchup. If you've got Desert's Fury up, which on her feels like he always does, then it's just jump in, disrespect your CC. I'm going to use my ultimate whenever I think you're going to minion stun. And if I time it right, you should just die if I'm accurate. And that time Netroid's accurate. And here's the problem, is that Nemelito's going to come back to lane, and it's going to happen to him again. And you need to have Raffer ready with that Defender of Olympus. He wasn't that time. And you're going to need it every single time, because Netroid scales much more quickly than you do on this Nuwa. Yes, you're going to outscale him eventually, but it's a much sharper curve for the Anhur in comparison to the Nuwa. So you're in a bad spot now if you're Emelito.
I think he's going to take a little bit of damage into the mid lane. I've also noticed with that little boxing match that Netroid's been doing in that dual lane is every time he leaps in, he weaves in a few basic attacks. That's just to stack up that Iqbal passive, most likely for it, so he can get the maximum power for that ultimate of his. And I can't imagine we won't see it again probably 2-3 more times as long as these hunters, or hunter players I should say here, not really a hunter on Nuwa, but as long as they're remaining alone in that lane, I can't imagine we won't see that probably happen more.
And now maybe Johnny has to spend a little bit more attention towards his duo lane. I mean, really it should be, Emelito should be calling, hey, he jumped, and then Johnny should immediately get up into the air, and then you Defender of Olympus over if you need the defense, and you should be able to kill him before Emelito falls, or at the very least in trade, that you can 1-for-1 that trade instead of just letting Emelito die for free every time.
Here's the double ultimate call out of her. Triple when you throw Duckies into the midst of it. World Weaver onto Genetics. Probably not the most optimal target they wanted for it. Crashing down is Johnny looking for somebody, but they're spreading their fight out. They don't have great target selection for it. And now Zeros is on the way as well after already using that World Weaver. Now Genetics, half health Variety as well. Confound's going to get 2 of them. Zeros trying to look for a target that he can get, but a beautiful root out of Genetics may have just saved that entire team fight. And look on the backside, here comes Tings.
Tings in a good position. Blink pluck from Variety, but beads out by Johnny, and Tings ready to eat.
He's going to throw out that Percussive Storm and right into the Tycho drums, looking for one. Raffer, he's going to miss the second shot of it and not quite do enough damage for it. But Variety's getting low as well as Genetics. He's not going to dash into the Monolith. Instead, he's just going to dash away. A scrappy team fight's going to come out with a net 0.
Yeah, a little surprised that Tings couldn't do a bit more, but these are a lot of tanky characters on this side of the map and not a lot of pen quite yet for Tings. Has the 20%, but flat pen is oftentimes what you want at this point in the game, and wasn't able to really pick any of that up quite yet. So he doesn't do quite enough. It's nothing for nothing over here on the right-hand side. At least you get Johnny's beads. But Netroid gets a tower on this left-hand side. Emelito basically forced to concede it. At least he doesn't die again. He makes the right decision, give up the tower, survive, and live to fight another day. But Netroid is just going to be able to strip farm from this whole side of the map. If I'm Netroid, I'm saying, hey, keep fighting in solo. The less we fight around me, the better, because I've got such an easy time 1v1ing on my side of the map.
It's going to be a quick beads pop there by Tings as he gets collapsed on by 3. Ends up losing that mid camp as well. Captain Twig and Variety both going for this Witchblade option. I mean, these items don't stack together. If you get all 5 members with it, it's not going to, super attack speed reduction. Is this just kind of dictate how they want to really play their team fights out?
Yeah, it's double Hunter. You don't have to worry about Nuwa's damage until a little bit later on. You can afford to stack more physical defense in comparison to magical defense. Like last game, Variety, he went for Wingblade in that second item slot. This time he opts for the Witchblade. Cheap. Movement speed, some protection. It's exactly what you want in a second item. I like it for both of these characters, letting Twig's dive be a little bit more effective and letting Variety tank a little bit better once he gets into that backline. I think it makes total sense.
A little bit of a slower match here now after the first initial kind of fights have been going through, especially in the dual lane. We haven't been seeing Netroid just W key at Emelito quite as often. I think now it's a little bit because of just how much tankier Emelito is. Although I still think a full combo might be enough to take him down. Ducky in a little bit of trouble here as he's met by Twig and Variety. He's going to be forced into the Somersault Cloud very early on to the fight, and that'll get Twig and Variety to back off for him for now.
I like what Netroid's doing on this side of the map, though, just not shoving these waves out entirely. He brought this wave all the way back to his tower line. Now he decides to hard clear because Draugr's up, and so that's at least something that he can create with the pressure. But if Emelito's going to walk to you here, this is where the all-in has got to happen. But you have to be worried about Johnny ulting in. He's got enough damage to really punish you now. So it's a matter of, can we put enough pressure elsewhere on the map to keep Johnny tied up so that I don't get all-in committed upon if I jump in. Now you're at the point where you can't really jump for free anymore in this lane. Even though your damage is as high as it's ever been, it makes it a little bit harder to all-in commit.
Well, that ultimate out of Emil will make sure that Netroid has to leave the Draugr alone. Johnny also in the sky hunting for his prey, but not going to find anyone. He'll just dive down onto the mid camps instead. Zeros will clear up the red buff for himself. But these Kings, they still have about a 5,000 plus gold lead in their favor. Still just holding control of that map, holding control of the farm. Even 3,400 experience to their name too.
And this is what I like what they're doing. They're keeping Twig on this right side of the map. They're focusing Genetics in mid. They're letting Netroid be on the island, letting him take those 1v1s as they can, but continuing to farm up Tings. I mean, Tings is 2 levels up now over Zeros, 2 levels up for Variety on the solo lane. Don't know how he is getting so much pressure as a Sobek, but he's a Sobek specialist. He's been playing that pick for a long time over there in solo. Very, very comfortable on it, and he's still one of the best when it comes to those late game initiations as a solo laner. Sobek solo, something that I don't know how many people are really excited to see it. I know some people are big Sobek fans. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not. And a lot of solo laners don't like how slow-paced the laning phase goes. But once you get into the team fight phase, man, that god just controls the entire game.
I think the best way to describe Sobek laning phase that I've heard from so many people is it's not a matter of if or when we kill him, it's a matter of how long do we have to sit here and wait for him to do something before a team fight. It's kind of the Sobek doesn't win lane, doesn't lose lane, he just kind of sits there and he just farms.
Stalemates it. Here, big taunt from Rapper.
Oh, immediately into it. Johnny's going to have to go into the back. He gets hit by 3 of those Taiko drums, and Rapper gets caught in the middle of all of them. Impale onto Ducky. He's going to get the Somersault Cloud out very early on. Genetics still playing a bit aggressive, dashes under that tower, and Ducky looking for a path out. Variety not going to find him with it, but the Thunder Crash is good. One more basic, it's all that's needed, but Tings will find it with the Percussive Storm, a leap for leap. Zeros to make sure he gets out, but Emil, I can't say the same for him, or even Zeros now, because the tanks are diving into the backliner. I say the tanks, but it's Big Man Tings diving in, but he's caught under the Phoenix, and he'll get turned and burned immediately by Emil.
Bit of a tough one so far for Big Man, but I don't think it's really going to matter because everyone else is absolutely working it right now for the Kings. Tings, or Twig,
triple.
Trying to get him. Emilito might be turning it around.
Johnny's going to pick up another one, takes the potential Penta away from him, but they can get a nice little team wipe here if they can find Genetics. They just need one little bit of lockdown to take out the support, but the Blink might spell the end of that one. Rapper still hunting in the wings, but those walls to make sure that Genetics has a safety path out.
All right, so the Kings really should have just destroyed that whole team fight, but then they decide to dive this Phoenix. It ends up being a massive overextension that's going to cost them a lot. This should be a fire giant here for the Valhalla Valkyries because they've got the DPS to do it. They've got Johnny, they've got Emilito, though Emil's not exactly contributing the most DPS in the entire world. They've got to try and get this down before Genetics gets here, because if Genetics gets a big ult off, he might be able to kill people by himself.
That is barely half health for Genetics, has made his way into the pin. He's hunting for Emil, Sunder, and stuck on the Ring of Fire as well. The walls are good, but not good enough to get him out because Johnny will dive right in, but here's Tings on the Taiko drums, looking for something. Genetics will get the credit for the kill afterward. Emil is low on the backside. Fire Giant still not down. Valhalla Valkyries will secure it, but how much will they lose on the back end of it? Make that 2 so far, and a third with Ducky falling down. 3 for the Fire Giant, and Genetics, not sure that's too worth.
Yeah, and only Zeros and Emilito have it. I mean, those are 2 good members to have it on, but you're going to lose a lot on the objective front. This should be a mid-Phoenix pretty easily. Raffer's up in 10, and he will have his Sunder up and available, and it's upgraded, so maybe they can make it work. But as soon as Netroid gets here, this should be pretty quick work on this mid-Phoenix. Just a matter of how much noise Emil and Zeros can make with help from Raffer.
He's done on the Variety. He's at half. He's going to get sundered back into the pillar. Zeros with a style kill on the backflip. Ultimate out of Emil to get a little bit of pot shot damage. And the Phoenix will stand. Camelot Kings not able to close it out. Not quite the damage available to them in order to take down that bird. So Valkyries, they hold out for just a little while longer on that mid lane objective.
Hey, that's a great trade for the Valkyries now, because you still have those 2 members with Fire Giant. You are in a better position in order to take this game, and you didn't even lose the mid-Phoenix. They nearly stole away that Oni Fury as well.
But Rapper's going to lose his life because of it. Use that dash to get in. Now Ducky's going to get shredded. Barely gets up onto the cloud. Johnny dives in the background looking for Tings, but Captain Tway will get the double kill, taking down Zeros. And Netroid finds Emil to make it a 3 sweep so far. Ting's going to make sure to zone Ducky out with that Taiko drums as well. So Fury goes down the way of the Kings.
All right, now this time, surely they can get this mid-Phoenix because it is already very weak. That was just, I mean, Raffer nearly gets Oni Fury, but he's got to tell his team, I'm going in for the steal, don't get baited. Instead, they get baited, and they're going to lose a lot for it.
Bird is going to be the least of their troubles so far. They lost the Fury, now they lose the mid lane Phoenix. And if there was any jungle for them to steal, they probably would have lost all of that as well. But luckily for the Valkyries, the speed and the blue are already down. They may end up losing that right side tier 1. You do see the Oni minions starting to push up aggressively on that side of the map. They'll shred down the last little bit of that tower.
Yeah, pretty easily. And so now you're looking at just 2 tier 2s left on your map. The Valkyries, I mean, their late game is still scary if you're the Kings. You've gotten punished a lot of times for being a little bit too aggressive, being a little too loose on your fights. You know that if the Valkyries can scale to the point where they can beat even the Terra composition, the Terra Sobek late game isn't infallible when you're talking about double Hunter plus a Nuwa. The problem is for the Valkyries is that their front line is paper in comparison. I mean, you've got a level 16 0-2 Wukong that really has just died every time he's gotten into these fights. And Raffer, who has similarly been shredded, even on the back of getting great. I mean, he got a 4-man taunt underneath the mid-tier 2 and then insta-died for it because there wasn't enough follow-up on the back end. The Valkyries just have to continue to try and tread water. Hang on. It's just going to have to be 5-6 minutes at least in order to really put a lot of threat onto the Kings. But if they can get there, the Kings don't go in it for free. Very different story to last game's composition.
And he's getting shredded without the need of a Sunder as well. That's triple blink and 4 sets of beads on the side of the Camelot Kings. They don't feel that they need that Sunder. I mean, like you said, Raffer's just dying the instant he taunts anybody. You know, you taunt that carry, Netroid's going to destroy that carry in this case. So, I mean, right now, it's just not looking super hot for the Valhalla Valkyries. They're going to have to make this Phoenix defense work out for them, though. Captain Twig going to have to use Lord of the Afterlife away. Genetics gets taunted back in. Johnny in the sky looking for a target to dunk down on, but not going to make his choice just yet. Waiting for the rest of the team to make their way in. He's going to look down towards Genetics, but Genetics is still living on just a thread of health. Blinks out, but Emil will have the closeout for the ultimate to make sure that he falls down, but at what cost? Genetics is getting low into the back. Ducky, he will not be able to live through there, as well as Raffer gets shredded down by Big Man Tings. Only 3 left for the Valkyries.
And Genetics, even though he dies, he lived for an eternity. And he made Johnny commit the ultimate onto him instead of being able to land onto the back line. And I think that's what you're looking at in this game is the difference in how effective this front line has been for the two teams. Ducky has just been unable to really stay alive or do enough damage on his dives. He's not really doing what the Valkyries need. Raffer's found great initiations, many great initiations, good taunts, but not able to put out enough damage or get that follow-up that he really needs on the back end. And even though Genetics ends up dying, he keeps the Valkyries focused on him long enough. They keep Netroid and Big Man Ting safe. I mean, Big Man got out of that last team fight without using a relic. And when that happens in a late game fight, that means that you got to really free cast, and that's really the story there. Netroid was under some pressure from that dive from Ducky and Raffer in particular. But Johnny needs to be diving in order to really make this composition, I think, work as a whole. I'm looking for Raffer to dash in, taunt, immediately turn and ult whoever is getting dove on his team, and let Ducky and Johnny really follow up together on what is happening with that Nuwa ultimate, with that Neath ultimate. You've got options in order to get damage onto this backline, but it's just been a little bit too difficult to get back there because of how great this initiation, the front line, has been for the Kings.
Right now with a 12,000 gold lead and quite a bit of experience still across the board. Ducky still not level 20. Zeros still hasn't hit level 20 as well. It's only Johnny and Emil who have been able to make their way to that level 20 mark for them, and that big experience difference can be big coming into this fight, and the gold difference probably even more stark onto there. You don't see it quite across the board. It looks fairly even as far as the items, but I doubt that the Kings have taken a chance to go back and spend a lot of that gold. Two-man taunt in by Raffer. Gonna get Genetics down to about half as well as Variety, but Genetics makes his way out. Ducky barely, with a sliver of health, was able to make it onto the cloud, and they're waiting for his land. The wall not going to find it. Desert's Fury not going to do anything for them as well. Twig is keeping Johnny company on the left-hand side there by that mid lane Phoenix, and Twig is just going for the boxing match, I think, onto it. He's coming out on top of that one. Johnny going to be able to so beautiful, or dash away from that one with the moves. Not going to be able to find it, though. Both of those junglers going to make it out for the time being, though. Ducky is continuing the chase and just gives up the right side.
Yeah, I don't think Ducky's going to be able to kill Twig from this position. In fact, I think Twig might win it with this health pool. He's got plenty of damage in the build. That serrated edge helping out with that extra pen really forced Johnny back underneath that mid Phoenix. But again, I think Raffer's playing this game really well. Another huge taunt from him, and there's just not quite enough follow-up. Emilito had a good combo. They were ready for it. They just aren't close enough in their builds.
Wall comes through, another two-man taunt out of Raffer, but he's going to get plucked right into the back line and taken down by Netrioid and Big Man Tings. Now it's the 4v5 under the already weakened mid lane Phoenix. It's not going to last much longer. And down the bird goes, and the walls will keep one Titan for now, but ultimately two, not going to live for much longer. It was only a delay of the inevitable. Variety picks him up, and into the throne room, the Camelot Kings go, looking to close this one out quick. Zeros gets thrown to the back, but he doesn't have any chance to live through that one. He's going to be taken down. And the Camelot Kings, and again, they're going to take a nice 2-0 victory over the Valhalla Valkyries. Just taking a little bit longer to get there.
Look, as expected, the Kings are one of the premier teams. The Valkyries have really continued to struggle here in Season 8, even after the mid-season patch. But I like the mid-set adjustment there from the Valkyries. I think that they learned from what went wrong in game number 1. They changed up their style. They had a composition that could scale alongside it. They punished the Kings' mistakes. Some signs of life, at the very least. The Kings maybe toyed with their food a little bit there in game 2. I imagine that they could have cleaned that up a little bit. But at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win, and they found the 2-0.
And the Camelot Kings are going to be able to extend themselves to 3-1 now into the standings. Unfortunately for the Valkyries, they're going to fall just a little bit harder here. We'll be back after the break for the Deaths to break it down.
Hello, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And very exciting stuff coming out of the Camelot Kings as they managed to take down the Valhalla Valkyries in a 2-0 fashion. But not only that, for you guys back at home that want to be able to show some support towards the SMITE Pro League itself, you can make sure to head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com, cop yourself some of this excellent SMITE Pro League Season 8 gear. You can rep it at home, rep it in front of your friends and family, or, just maximum comfort all day long, Mifflin. That's really the end game goal here.
Yeah, for the fans at home that wanted that $5 off, that code is no longer available. Hold that L. Should have got on it while it was available because you do want this merch, Taco. I mean, I've had the privilege of getting a couple pieces of it, and you got to fight me to take it off.
The hoodies are incredibly soft. I can actually attest to that firsthand. I'm actually a really big fan of the SMITE Pro League hoodie itself. But aside from all of this excellent gear, that's one more time, shop.smiteproleague.com. Getting whack on focus with the action that we just saw taking place here for the Camelot Kings up against the Valhalla Valkyries. Like we already mentioned, Mifflin, it was a 2-0 control fest for the Camelot Kings, but we did see some interesting moments there from the Valhalla Valkyries, most notably that Fire Giant steal was a little bit hype up until the whole team died for it just about.
And that 17-minute team fight where they were clean up 4 for 0. There were a couple of shining moments here for the Valkyries where this draft that I had come into this set thinking, or this game rather, thinking, all right, it's a little bit questionable. It's pretty high execution. It's going to be very hard to perform on it. The Valkyries do indeed look incredibly good, but got to give props where they're due. The Camelot Kings are looking incredibly strong. I think out of the jungle in particular, that Osiris pick does incredibly well. 4-1, plenty of damage. I'm just a huge fan of what we saw from the Kings, and I think it's something that the fans have come to expect from this draft.
Just think that every single member from the Camelot Kings was really operating at their maximum capability today, and it didn't matter if you were looking at duo lane, at the jungle, solo, mid lane, whatever. Variety really hit the nail on the head during that pregame interview when he mentioned that he just had expectations for the entire team to perform. And it just seemed as though there wasn't really a whole lot of concern from the Camelot Kings, even where there were those moments for the Valhalla Valkyries where it seemed as though the game might be able to shift into their favor. Camelot Kings just regrouped, recentered, and refocused their target focus onto some of that back line, and really just did a great job, I think, at controlling the entire map, despite the fact that it was the Valhalla Valkyries that had all this global presence.
Yeah, they had so much of it, the capacity to dive the backline, and a couple of times the Valkyries did do a good job of separating the team fight. Very often, Netroid would get isolated, and it'd be up to him and Genetics to fight their way out of these dire odds, and very consistently, they were able to do that. And I do want to highlight Genetics on this Terra pick. Doesn't look great in the damage department, but that healing 5.5k looking very good. That's generally all off the Earther and Fury. I don't think we saw them really grouping up around that third ability too often. And, well, Genetics makes it look easy. He was the only one to reprise his pick there, except for the on-her coming through. But I think that Terra should be one that the entire league keeps their head on a pivot for. Don't let Genetics get too comfy.
Additionally, the Camelot Kings, they're keeping the rest of the league on their toes as they climb into that third place spot, or I should say keep it, rather, with a 3-1 standings record. And as you guys can already tell, Olympus Bolts still sitting pretty at the top there, tied for first place with the Atlantis Leviathans. This next set up against the Solar Scarabs actually going to be taking place here in studios. Woo! So having that little bit of land factor being provided is certainly bound to be a load of fun between the Olympus Bolts and the Solar Scarabs, with the Camelot Kings taking over the Valhalla Valkyries here in that 2-0 fashion. A lot of other really fun matches coming in later on this week, Mifflin, but the focus is on today, and the focus is right now with the Camelot Kings. We talked about them enough on the desk, but Genetics actually going to be joining us for the post-game interview, the support here for the Camelot Kings. And Genetics, you had the Terra, you had the control. What made you so convinced that this was the play for today?
I just always enjoy playing Terra. I don't think there's a specific game or situation where I wouldn't want to play the character. So just every game, if I can play it, I'll play it.
And with the team now being pretty much solidified in that third place spot, how difficult do you think it's going to be to move up in the standings when you're looking at some of the opposition that's standing there at the top, the Atlantis Leviathans and those Olympus Bolts?
Yeah, really hard. I think we've always, we're pretty good at being the lower end teams, and we struggle a lot against the higher end teams. I think next week we play Leviathans and Dragons, so if we beat both, then we'll be on top. But if not, then you'll see us in the same spot as always, around third or fourth is where we usually usually set.
And as far as the new season meta is concerned, how much are you finding yourself actually enjoying that support role? Do you feel as though there have been any changes?
Oh, I'm loving it. Yeah, it's really good. I was the support that bought the tank boots the least, so I didn't really like building them anyway. It's good to see a lot of my teammates get a bit of motivation back as well after playing the same game, same kind of phase for a while. I think it just makes the game way more varied in picks, and it's a lot faster, and it just feels really nice to play. So it's just good all round for the scene and for everyone playing. Yeah.
Well, it certainly seemed as though you were clean on that Terry today, and the team as a whole, I think, with exceptionally clean gameplay up against the Valhalla Valkyries. So congratulations to you and the team one more time on that 2-0 victory. But for the rest of you guys back at home, make sure to stay tuned because, like I mentioned, we're going to have the Olympus Bolts facing off against the Scarabs here in studios, and it's not a set that you're going to want to miss. So, Genetics, enjoy the rest of your day, and for the rest of you guys,
Cheers.
we'll see you momentarily.